So I thought we would continue on with my plants and animals by looking at this tank here in my kitchen. So this is my kitchen shelf, my coffee pot and stuff. And on the bottom of this shelf, I have an aquatic invertebrate tank. Right now, this invertebrate tank only has small invertebrates in it. So amphipods, isopods, daphnia, and cyclops are in here, plus several species of snails, and a lot of different plants. This setup is pretty easy to maintain, though it does need some care. So in the bottom, I have the fluorite sea chem product, plus a little bit of crushed coral, just a tiny bit, and some sand. So that's all mixed in the bottom here. That's what I'm using for the substrate. And then I've planted the plants directly into that. It seems to work pretty well for this setup. I don't have to add any sort of fertilizers too often. And one of the reasons I want to avoid that is because most of the aquatic fertilizers do have copper in them, and copper is typically bad for invertebrates. I do use the Sea Chem Flourish and Excel. Flourish I use about once every 2 weeks in the summertime, once every month or so in the wintertime. And I use a third of the dosage because that does have copper in it. So I put enough in for the plants to be maintained, but not enough to hurt the invertebrates. The Excel, which is a carbon replacement or a liquid carbon, I do put in about once a week in the summertime, once every 2 weeks to 3 weeks in the wintertime. Right now this tank is getting indirect sunlight. The door is right there, so it has a lot more growth than it does in the wintertime. And I sort of keep that in mind when I am working with this. So some of the plants that are in here, over here we have willow moss, and there's one of the snails. I forget what the tall plant is in the back. And then there's some java ferns and some hornwort over here. So there's just a few plants in here. I would like to upgrade this and have a bigger aquatic invert tank and sort of add some larger shrimp and things to it. I just haven't had the time to set that up since moving recently. And if you look here, you can see, if we watch carefully, there's an amphipod right here in the center of the screen. It isn't actually moving, unfortunately. If it would swim, we'd be able to see it. Oh, there it went. They're very small, they're very fast. There's another one over here at the edge. So these are all pretty small invertebrates, but I do like this tank. It is a really nice and relaxing setup. One of the things I do have is I have a Phoenix LED plant light up on top of it. It is, I believe, a 24-inch, and this is a 20-inch tank. I also aerate this tank. It's important when you're aerating an invertebrate tank that you do not use an air stone. The small bubbles can actually get stuck in the exoskeletons or the shells of your invertebrates and actually kill them or cause them significant trouble. So I just put the air hoses into the water with nothing on them. That seems to work really well. For the first couple weeks, I did have to use like a paper clip that I had bent to hold the hoses in place, but now that they're sort of bent in place, they stay there very well. I also used to have a filter on here, and I noticed that since I've taken the filter off, the plants are growing better, the invertebrates are breeding better, so I'm not going to have that. Maybe once I start with larger shrimp, I will go back to having a filtration system on it. And I probably will if I do a larger aquarium setup like this. But for right now, this small tank does very well without anything. There's another amphipod down here on the wood. It's very hard to focus on them because they are so small. And they sort of blend in, their bodies are semi-clear. So this is the next in my series of going through my plants and animals. This is my aquatic invertebrate tank. If you have any questions about how it was set up or more in depth about how it's maintained, feel free to ask.